Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai. Well, we got a lot of a news cycle to whip through here today. We got everything from parks maybe losing their UNESCO status to, of course, crime. It's just craziness. A little bit of Doug Ford here between the Bill 5 and these trade tariffs, and pretty much we got some really good feedback coming from a Fox interview with actually a large investor within the steel corporation in both Canada and America. We're going to kind of deal with both sides of everything. We've also got some you know what? Let's just kind of start rolling this. I've got a lot to go through. I'm going to try and squeeze this in an hour. I try to keep them short, but it's really hard because there's always craziness going down in our new post-national state of chaos. So we're going to start off with this Liberals lost a vote in the House, and it's about tabling an actual, spring budget, which would be nice considering these guys have had control of the books for how many years? It's kind of an embarrassment. Actually, it's beyond embarrassment. It's an obvious, blatant show of ignorance and, socialist type of a regime power by withholding the amount of money that they plan on spending, which, by the way, is going to blow what the Governor Turd was already planning to blow. Like, Canada can't afford this anymore. We're broke. You Liberal voters out there, you really need to watch and pay attention to real news. This is why I need all my fans and any new viewers to like, share, and subscribe so you can actually see what's happening in Canada and get away from the propaganda. They're only in for one thing: their paychecks and a socialist society. Mainstream is useless. They gotta go. In order to break it, you gotta support independent media. Now, let's just start firing this stuff off. So the Liberals downplay a narrowly lost vote demanding the spring budget. So Ottawa, the Liberals downplay the vote, blah, 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 in opposition parties to urge the government to present an economic update or a budget before the House of Commons rises for the summer in June 20th. And by the way, these guys, it's going to be one of the shortest sitting years in recorded history. Liberals do not like to work. And considering they keep saying how we're under the most existential threat ever to Canada, you would think they would be in Parliament every day until they actually fix the problem. But they don't want to do that because they caused the problems. The sub-amendment brought forward by Conservative interim leader Andrew Scheer called for a firm commitment to present a fiscal overview of the country's finances this spring that incorporates measures aimed at unleashing Canada's economic potential. It was adopted Monday by 166 votes comprised of the Conservatives, the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, and the Drunk May, against 164 Liberal votes. It is, however, a non-binding vote, meaning that the government is under no obligation to present a spring economic update or a budget. But the vote in this new minority parliament showed how opposition parties can aspire to go up against the government and its razor-thin margin in the House. Mark Garretson, the chief government whip, who is responsible for ensuring that Liberal MPs attend the vote in the way of the party desires, insisted nothing went wrong. We knew the outcome of what that vote was going to be, he told reporters on Tuesday. Blah, 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 blah. I try not to bake feelings into these things. They're math challenges, not problems with feelings, but we have to make sure that we do the work necessary to try and collaborate with parties across the aisle in order to implement the mandate that Canadians have given us. That's all a load of horsepucky. This Liberal Party, the new Liberals, are the dirtiest. I've watched politics since I was a teenager. Fascinated by question period, the entire process. I've never seen a more corrupt, dirty socialist regime than the new Liberal Party that is in power. It's disgusting. Finance Minister Francois Philippe Champagne, the loud chihuahua with no brains, said last month there would be no federal budget in the spring but fall economic statement shortly after Prime Minister, after massive pressure by the way, said his government would present a budget during the fall instead. They go off, blah, 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 blah. Will the minority Liberal government listen to the majority in the House and table a budget immediately, asked BC MP Dan Elvis. Will the Prime Minister respect the will of Parliament and table a budget immediately so Canadians in this Parliament can have the transparency we deserve, echoed Alberta MP Kelly McCauley. After skirting around the questions from the opposition benches, Carney eventually said, "We take note of last night's motion." In other words, yeah, whatever. He doesn't care. Yeah, it's just disgusting. Government House Leader Stephen McKinnon noted on that Monday's vote to attempt to force the government to table a spring economic update or a budget is non-binding, and said he suspects MPs are going to see a lot more of those resolutions. McKinnon said the real test of government would come during the vote for the actual throne speech, which is a confidence vote, expected to happen Wednesday evening. Now, if all of these opposition parties were serious about the transparency of all of our Canadian tax dollars, this government should be expected to fall. But guess what? I have my doubts about that, because you have the drunk May, who hates democracy with every core of her drunken thumbs, and you have the Bloc, who They want to ride the tail feathers of the Liberal Party, considering how they got decimated, and make sure to shut the West down. They like this. They like free money. And Carney's already said numerous times he's not changing any part of the equalized payment plan. So, yeah, I don't think they'll fall, which shows just how much of a kangaroo court, a kangaroo, banana republic we actually live in. Now, welcome to Canada. This is Dave Portney, the pizza kind of guy. He was in Canada to test a pizza, to give it a, scale, help business, and do what he does. He's the pizza king. And this guy, by the way, he raised a lot of money and supported a lot of businesses that were going under during the fake Wuhan scare. But I'm going to play the whole thing here, because then you can kind of get the storyline of it. But listen, this is Canada today, people. This is Canada today.
Welcome back. Welcome to Canada.
So you just come with us. We have a driver.
Get in the car.
So you'll get me back here by 2.
I'll bring you here by 2:15
All
the latest. Jake.
But you already changed it 15
No.
minutes just in that one thing.
2 o'clock, Paul. We got to have him back.
All right, pizza review time. We are in Toronto, Terraza. We are back with the great cousin Paul.
If you don't go to Pizza Gigi, it's a shame. That's the oldest pizza.
All right,
guy
I'll do Pizza Gigi.
So he was in
Go
town
on,
testing
please,
pizza
man.
at another place, and another guy had confronted him and said, "You haven't tasted like this other place." So so this is where they're going back in time, and they're showing 3 years ago. So 3 years ago compared to today.
Little over a year. Little over a year. Oh, I'm back. I told you I live around the corner.
Frank's.
Get in the car with us. They can follow. Let's go. Come on.
Do our people even know where we're going?
And the guy who owns this name is Frankie Lasagna.
Okay, so I'm going to warn you, there's some profanity here.
Real name.
He almost caught Aaron Judge's historic ball. He missed it. It was his claim to fame. He became very popular in Toronto because he almost caught the ball and his last name's Lasagna.
We got Frankie Lasagna's whole story, which almost seemed borderline not believable. Like, see, there we go.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
See, there we go.
Welcome to Canada.
There we go. What are you guys fucking laughing about?
Terrible.
There's old school and then there's no school.
There's no school.
Those aren't terrific.
Good quality
What
pizza.
an
I'm gonna go.
absolute embarrassment Canada has become. We're allowing fascism and this extremist ideology, just completely. The East has become anti-Canadian. You wonder why the West wants out. And it's tolerated. Disgusting. Moving along. Sam dropping more bombshells. Good old Sam Cooper. If you don't know who he is, I urge you to definitely follow, and share him. And subscribe to his paper, which is The Bureau. Mexican cartels expanding operations in Canada using indigenous reserves as factory hubs. With factories on Six Nations land, Mexican cartels are using Canada to smuggle counterfeit goods into the U.S. and Mexico. Project Panda, a major Ontario gang task force takedown in May, targeting a counterfeit tobacco factory on the Six Nations Reserve near Hamilton and Buffalo, exposes a long-ignored reality. Mexican cartel networks have deeply embedded themselves in Canadian territory near the U.S. border and are expanding in tandem with Chinese state-linked crime partners using indigenous land for counterfeit production and cross-border smuggling. This is no longer just a policing matter, it is a national security crisis, one that exploits indigenous communities, land, and jurisdictional protections that have inadvertently shielded criminal networks now designated as terrorist threats. Worse still, the threat has long been known to Canadian, American, and Mexican authorities, yet Ottawa has failed to act. Nothing surprising there. Stunningly, an explosive intelligence report released last year labeled Canada a safe zone for Chinese and Mexican cartel networks to traffic weapons, drugs, and counterfeit tobacco through Six Nations land. Mexican authorities have also stated that Canada is responsible for 12% of all the lost tax revenue from the Mexican government from illicit cigarettes, the report says, and alleges that companies established in Six Nations have introduced up to 500 million cigarettes a year illegally into Mexico. That same report says that more than 73 illicit factories have operated over the past 20 years, linked to 173 organized crime groups, including Mexican and Chinese networks. Heavily armed Ontario provincial police units, supported by multiple agencies, raided the factory and associated sites on May 1st and 7th. The target spanned Six Nations, Brantford, and Ancaster territories, sitting between Hamilton, Niagara Falls, and Buffalo. What they found was staggering: 1,360 pounds of illegal cannabis, 3.16 kilograms of psilocybin, 15 firearms, and large skids of counterfeit tobacco packaging valued at over $3 million. The factory is surrounded by barbed fences and trailer trucks. One of the raids intercepted 2 vehicles leaving the site with $11.1 million in contraband cigarettes, worth another $2.8 million. And it goes on and on. This is just, Canada has just become an absolute laughing stock. And because of our completely destroyed economy, Canada is now among the countries to be hit the hardest by a slowdown of global economy. The new report warns Canada for a grim future, predicting that our economy will be hit the hardest by a global economic slowdown. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, released the first issue of its 2025 economic outlook, and the forecast didn't look so good for countries embroiled in a trade war with the United States. The economic outlook projects global growth slowing from 3.3% in 2024 to 2.9% in both 2025 and 2026. It notes that the slowdown is expected to be the most pronounced in the United States, Canada, Mexico, and China. The global outlook is becoming increasingly challenging, reads the report. Substantial increases in trade barriers, tighter financial conditions, weakened businesses and consumer confidence, and elevated policy uncertainty all pose significant risks to growth. The OECD shared a list of G20 economies, real GDP growth for 2024, and projections for 2025 and 2026. Canada's economy grew 1.5% in 2024. 1.5%. We are at the bottom of the dig a hole, and you still haven't reached the bottom of how horrible our GDP has been in the last 7.5 years, thanks to a fascist liberal government. Now, I'm going to play a clip here in a moment, and this guy just nails the reality where this report isn't talking about. Canada's economy grew 1.5% in 2024, and that's expected to go down to 1% this year and increase slightly in 2026 to 1.1%. Oh, Canada. My God, you guys voted Liberals again. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We got to get reality, real news. Sorry, so sorry. Just the facts out to the people. Now, take a very close listen. This guy nails. This is a thing of beauty. I'm so glad somebody finally said it.
It's very obvious at this point, I think, that Trump, Putin, and to a lesser extent, I even believe Xi, but I'm not quite on the fence. I'm still a little on the fence about this. They understand who the real enemy is, and the real enemy is continental Europe, and it's the old banking interest of colonial Europe that need to be destroyed. And that includes City of London, not Britain, City of London. the square mile. It's very important. That includes the Vatican. I hate to say it. And the goal is, if you look at everything that's happening, if you just look at all the little hotspots around the world and the way that things are shaping up, they are trying to bottle up the old pirates of colonial Europe so that they have no places to plunder. So they've lost Russia. They're losing the Middle East. Trump said very nice things about Erdogan, Turkey taking Syria, which blocks Israel from going to war with Iran. The French have lost the Sahel region of Africa. That's all gone. The United States, nope, we're changing the way we do business. We're not going to allow Janet Yellen to spend us in the debtor's prison and everything else. The United States is secured. What do all of these regions have in common? Unbelievable natural resource wealth. Europe has no collateral. I learned that from Alex Craner. And since then, that model has made perfect sense to explaining how everybody is acting. Europe's only path forward is to plunder Canada. That's why they hate Alberta.
Nailed it.
That's why Ottawa hates Alberta. That's why Mark Carney is Prime Minister. And that's what has to end.
He absolutely nailed it. Now, I did an episode, and if you're a new viewer, and even if you're an old subscriber, I urge you, check out my previous episodes. I've got a lot of amazing stuff in there, not necessarily just the basic everyday news cycle. I do a lot of breakdowns, a lot of in-depth fact-checking, a lot of history, and of course breaking a lot of stories. But one of the ones I did was how I compared what is the monarchy to being the first corporations. And I urge you to watch that and then sit back and think carefully about what this guy just said, because that was kind of what the whole episode was alluding to, was that the monarchy is helping the corporation. And now the corporation isn't just the king anymore, because he's just a sock puppet for all of the multi-billionaires, the global elite that are trying to keep pillaging on the backs of citizens, all of us peasants. I urge you to watch it. It's really good, and then you will understand a little better about what he just said. And he just nailed it. He nailed it. Other than the fact that he's saying how Trump has got the kind of the spending in order, this big beautiful bill, there's a lot of money being spent. He's raising the debt ceiling again. It's kind of a scary thing. There's a lot of Americans that are fighting back on that. But in the same aspect, he's been right on so many different things, and what he's done for the economy down south, I don't know. I think there may be a lot more economic policy that I'm just not seeing. I kind of a little bit worried myself about the spending, but personally, it's the States. I'm more concerned about Canada and what's left of it as the buzzards pick us apart. But this guy nailed it. He nailed it.
When I read the geopolitical game board, folks, and I'm playing Donald Trump's faction, that's how I'm taking out all y'all.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, let's just kind of get going on the news cycles.
Now to the latest on the wildfire situation. An evacuation order was issued late this afternoon for Lac La Ronge, Air Ronge, and the Lac La Ronge Indian Band as the wildfire situation in northern areas continues to worsen. The Saskatchewan Health Authority is working to safely move more than 45 acute care patients and long-term care residents from La Ronge. Meanwhile, Candle Lake remains in jeopardy as flames inch closer. Jasmine Peltier has the latest.
An evacuation order has now been issued for La Ronge, Air Ronge, and Lac La Ronge Indian Band. The resort village of Candle Lake is preparing for a potential mandatory evacuation call as the largest wildfire in Saskatchewan is under 14 kilometers away.
Last Wednesday, the fire came out of the east and it made a 14-kilometer run in one day towards Candle Lake.
Meanwhile, the voluntary evacuation advisory for Candle Lake remains in effect. The Shoe Fire threatening the community is now over 400,000 hectares, 18 times the size of Saskatoon.
Even in a 50K wind blowing directly at the fire is still creeping towards Candle Lake. It gains about 400 meters every day against the wind.
3 fire breaks have been set up at the northwest part of Candle Lake and more are in progress. The Shoe Fire has led to evacuations of East Trout Lake, Little Bear, Wayland Bay, Lower Fishing Lakes, and the closure of Narrow Hills Provincial Park. On Monday, another fire causing more evacuations in the northern part of the province.
The Pisu fire, which is west of La Ronge, it has led to the evacuation for some time of Hall Lake. Due to its spread eastward, currently there are evacuations in place for Wadden Bay, Sucker River, English Bay, and Namibin.
The J. Smith fire north of Mississippi led to the evacuation of the Brabant community. The Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency says the fires have impacted highways and forced some to close.
Highways 913 and 912 are both closed because of the Shoe Fire.
At least 163 confirmed structures, including homes and cottages, have been lost to fire.
Yeah, they're saying there's a huge loss on the one side of the park. It's everything's been completely wiped right out, and they are airlifting and evacuating all of the rest of the firefighters in that area because they've lost control around the banks and the shores. So hopefully the bombers can at least snuff out and save the rest of all of that park. Now moving on to Alberta.
More than 24 buildings, including key infrastructure, have burned in a northern Alberta community. Chippewan Lake is one of a handful of communities evacuated since last week. CTV's Nariman Issa has been following this story for us and joins us live with the latest. So Nariman, what structures were destroyed?
Well, Matt, it's believed the Chippewan Lake water treatment plant, a church, and health center are gone. The chief of Big Stone Cree Nation says those are 3 of the 27 structures that fire crews are reporting destroyed. More information and pictures are expected to be released tomorrow. Meanwhile, there has been some help in Alberta's firefight thanks to Mother Nature.
He asked when we were going home, so like yesterday, last night, so yeah, I think they're getting a little bit homesick now.
Lacey Noski and her 2 kids have been living in a hotel for days after being evacuated from Loon River First Nation.
Right now, we're here till Wednesday so far, so after that, we'll know more for an update.
According to the province, more than 4,600 Albertans have been evacuated due to wildfires. Big Stone Cree Nation's chief says wildfire breached Chippewan Lake 3 hours after the evacuation order went out.
We believe we have lost 27 structures, including the senior center, the water treatment plant, the church, and the Big Stone Health Center.
The wildfire situation has improved in parts of northern Alberta. Peerless Trout First Nation posted this picture, writing after 18 days on the front fire line, some of their brave firefighters are going for a well-deserved 3-day rest. Wet weather is helping.
But we are seeing cooler temperatures and higher humidities, which is helpful as well. So reports I'm seeing across the board are that fire behavior is not as severe as it was on that Thursday, Friday, but we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination.
Additional firefighting resources from Yukon and the United States are en route to help fight wildfires. The Premier says Alberta firefighters sent to other communities have been called back.
We are about to restart our Emergency Management Committee of Cabinet because this is an indicator with so many communities facing evacuation that we've got to be able to respond in a way that is going to be rapid.
Now, according to the Federal Minister of Emergency Management, the province has not requested federal assistance at this time. As for evacuation orders, 3 communities in Yellowhead County will be able to return home starting tomorrow at noon. Those are residents of Piers, Robb, and Mercole. Now, also, Matt, the RCMP and Alberta Wildfire are reminding people to not use drones in active wildfires. That RCMP posted that drones in Swan Hills area has grounded helicopters.
Yeah, not a good thing, you guys. Come on. All this for a clip You're putting mass amounts of people at risk, their homes, and our ecosystem. Keep your damn drones out of the skies. Moving along. Good old Surrey.
The suspect can clearly be seen walking down the street armed with 2 handguns. He unloads dozens of shots directly at the home on Coulthard Road. This incident on May 25th caught on security camera. The second time this home has been shot at. Surrey police tying the investigation to an extortion plot.
Yeah, we're investigating it currently as an extortion file. We have spoken with the family on several occasions. We've spoken with them about safety planning and those kinds of things.
After the first shooting 12 days earlier, the SPS installed its own video surveillance tower at the home. In the video provided to Global News, you can see it near the shooter, but not the cruiser that has been occasionally parked there as well. Despite capturing images that might identify the suspect and his white Tesla, the SPS not releasing its version of the incident.
We're not currently at the position to be able to release any surveillance images or photos. We have some investigative leads that we want to follow up on.
Last month, an Ontario man was killed, allegedly part of an extortion plot. At this point, Surrey police not linking the two, but investigators are working closely with teams across the country, trying to determine any connections.
There's both
karma in that case would have been nice, considering he was standing so close to the fence. It would have been nice to have seen the one of those bullets just kind of ricochet right back at him, but not in this case, which is too bad. But hopefully they catch this guy. This is getting out of hand. Surrey is out of control.
Regional task forces, there's national task forces. Detectives are talking to each other across the country every week, as are intelligence officers and analysts, trying to figure out whether or not there may be any connections at all.
No suspects have been identified. No arrests have been made. The Surrey Police Service asking for people to come forward.
Well, there are people in the community who know who's behind this. There are people who know who the shooter probably is, and we need those people to come forward before someone gets hurt.
Aaron MacArthur.
Now, again, I urge you to watch previous episodes. I did a 3-part series on the Calistinis and how the Liberal Party has been using them, and not just the new. This happened during the first Trudeau, and then the Liberals kind of tried to clean their party up, and they did a pretty good job for a little while. But when the second Trudeau came in, he went right back to the fear, hate, and division, especially being a pawn for China, which we know through all the reporting with Sam Cooper. The Liberal Party it's so corrupt and so infiltrated. Everybody who knows anything about the news, anything that knows anything about the system, the governments, is aware that not only has China infiltrated the Liberal Party, but so has the Calistini movement. These people are psychos. They need to be removed, charged, and sent back to India. There's more Calistinis here than there are in India. Think about that. They flee here because this is the new place for them to do business and to cause damage, to take lives in India. We are a hotbed of extremism, which you can see between the Hamas protesters, the Calistinis like this. Canada is just, God, man, no wonder the West needs to leave. Scary, scary times. Moving on. Burlington home in Ontario.
Neighbors tell us that a family lived in this home. Now this home, the focus of multiple investigations, including the SIU investigation into the death of a 28-year-old man. Here's more.
There was a struggle between the male upstairs with police, and there would have been a brief interaction and conducted an energy weapon. And then there was also the self-inflicted wound suffered by this individual. Life-saving measures that were attempted to be provided. EMS called, they came, and that's sort of the information that I have right now at this early stage.
Here's what we know. The SIU says 911 calls came in for this home on Cornerstone Drive in Burlington around 12:30 a.m. Halton police responded to the home. The 28-year-old man fled upstairs. Around the time police had arrived, he sustained self-inflicted injuries. Police attempted to arrest the man, and a taser was activated at the time of the arrest, but details on that are limited. Officers attempted life-saving measures, but the 28-year-old was eventually pronounced dead on scene. Another man in his 50s was located in the home. He was pronounced dead on scene. A woman in her 50s was transported to hospital with minor injuries. She's since been released from hospital. The SIU says a knife has been recovered from the scene and will be looked at closely in this investigation. A post-mortem is currently being conducted on the 28-year-old.
I wonder if it was an assault-style knife. Ooh.
That too will be a part of their investigation. One neighbor who didn't want to identify himself says the family that lives here have had conflict in the past, and police have been called to the residence before. Still, other neighbors are waking up this morning feeling shocked and saddened for the family.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Now, here, potentially hundreds of RBC customers may have been defrauded in Montreal.
Every time I go to sleep, I think about it. How did they get to me so easily?
Last July, Joyce Harper got a call, one she normally wouldn't answer. But the week before, her bank had told her about a fraudulent charge made on her credit card. So she picked up. This time, it was about an e-transfer.
Limit is too much or something. I don't know, something about my limit. I didn't know anything about that limit that was there. Something about $10,000 limit.
She followed instructions, and it appears the person on the phone was able to intercept the money transfer. Within minutes of hanging up, she was out $2,500.
Like they kind of manipulate you. They're so good at it.
If it sounds familiar, that's because it is. In April, Cassandra Schaffhausen shared her story of being frauded more than $80,000 from a fake RBC agent.
Said, well, there's an $18,000 and a $7,000. You didn't do that?
And in May, we met Ida Pala, who lost $25,000 in a similar scheme.
Have you made a purchase of $14,000 in Vancouver? I said, no.
All three were customers of RBC. All three say they were refused a refund. But they may just be the tip of the iceberg. The Montreal police, who were not available for an interview today, told La Presse they've received reports from 220 RBC customers claiming they were frauded, and that the real number of victims is likely much higher. Option Consommateur is offering legal help to some of the RBC victims, those who are now on the hook for money they didn't even borrow.
Les banques peuvent très facilement faire porter la responsabilité de la perte.
By law, banks can easily shift the responsibility to the customer, says Alexandre Plourde.
Tout ce qui est virement en ligne, virement interact.
He says even Quebec's strong consumer protection laws don't cover things such as wire or interact transfers and debit card fraud. The organization is calling on the federal government to hold banks to account. In a statement to CTV News, RBC says while they cannot comment on specific cases, they're working with law enforcement.
Now, it just seems that it could very well be some type of an inside job because it's only RBC, and the way these fraudsters are working, they seem to be privy to a fair amount of information, so they only need a little wee bit in order to secure that little extra bit of info in order to go through with these scams. Something's fishy, nobody's talking. Usually when that happens, it's an inside job. Moving on.
2 men are dead following a fatal dirt biking incident northwest of Cochrane over the weekend. Tyson Fedor joins us from near the scene. And Tyson, the 2 men were on private property at the time.
The two 21-year-old men, Tara, were dirt biking just north of where I am here on Horse Creek Road. That's when they were pronounced dead at the scene by RCMP when they arrived, and Mounties telling us that they were not wearing helmets at the time of the collision. Police responded around 12:42 a.m. on Saturday for a dirt biking collision. Both men were from Cochrane. It's unclear at this point if speed or alcohol played any factor in the crash. Police saying there was no evidence at the scene to suggest there was brake marks from that collision, but you can see tire tracks in the ditch along Horse Creek Road. There's also some scattered debris laying on the sides of the road. And now the investigation remains ongoing at this point, and RCMP are extending its condolences to the friends and families of both men.
Sad. Very sad. This aerial view of a pursuit and arrest after a carjacking attempt in Ajax.
And he's back down towards the south side of the school, walking westbound to the parking lot. On your right, on your right, on your right. Foot pursuit, westbound on the south side of the school.
10-3, throwing stuff.
126. What units in pursuit? Now northbound on the front side, they've got him now. One is off with him. Everyone confirming a unit is off with the male. One in custody, 127.
I'm glad they caught him. Did you see all the debris, all of the stuff? It must have been narcotics and could be other, things used to assault people with that he was throwing out of his pockets while he was running. So 2 Canadian geoparks could lose their UNESCO designation.
We are in the Cliffs of Fundy Geopark.
Anna Hergert takes people on custom tours in Nova Scotia's UNESCO Global Geopark. She worries that rare designation could be at risk.
It's put this area on the map. For me, that was one of the main reasons to settle in this area.
UNESCO geoparks must have geology and culture of international importance. The towering Cliffs of Fundy are steeped in Mi'kmaq history, boasting the highest tides in the world and telling the story of the moment the world's supercontinent broke apart. The area received its UNESCO designation in 2020, one of only 5 in Canada, and 229 on the planet.
This is one of the most exciting things that I believe has happened in West Colchester and West Cumberland ever.
Neat, right? Not so fast. UNESCO geoparks are re-evaluated every 4 years, and when Cliffs of Fundy was tested, it received a yellow card, a warning of sorts. 2 years to get things back in shape or lose its designation.
It would have been lovely to have just received the green card, but in a way I think it's good that we've been motivated to really kind of hone in and focus.
UNESCO recommended securing funding, putting up more signage, improving infrastructure and access roads, and better sharing the area's story. The Discovery Geopark in Newfoundland and Labrador received a similar report card. So did Percé in Quebec, only that geopark has since gotten its green card back.
It's really just continue working with your community, showing UNESCO how important the community is for you.
So you can see that this little bridge up here is thinning out.
Hergert says potentially losing the advertising that comes with the designation is concerning.
If I lose that, then my future is kind of uncertain.
But she says there have been a lot of improvements, which is a good thing because time's up. The evaluators are coming back next month. Kayla Hounsel, CB.
Yeah, they got to get their crap together. If they lose that, they do lose a lot of free advertising, and the advertising helps not only with the park, keeping funding for the park, it also really helps the communities around it with their tourism. And it's kind of it's a good and a bad, right? So the more tourists you have, the more damage you have to the area. If you don't have any tourists, then you don't actually get the surrounding areas don't get the economic prosperity that comes with being around a UNESCO site. So it's really kind of you're playing with two edges of a sword on it. We're going to move on along here. This is an archaeological dig underway at Calgary's Edworthy Park. This is kind of fascinating.
They tell a story that most citizens and visitors are unaware of.
Students at the University of Calgary are hoping to unearth some history at an archaeological dig site inside of Edworthy Park, where they say they've found signs of a pre-contact Indigenous campsite.
This is actually the University of Calgary's Archaeology Field School. This site actually has been known since the 70s. It's just never been excavated.
The team is looking for lithics, the stone tools and bits broken off when the tools were made.
So that's where they've taken little flakes of rock off to get not only the shape they want, but also the desired angle.
They don't know the date of the campsite yet, but say they may send a bone they unearthed for carbon dating to hopefully narrow down a time period. This dig is unique, as most archaeological sites like this take place in an area undergoing development. This one, rather, is right in the middle of a dog park. It's something the team appreciates, as they're able to share findings with people who are walking by.
So we've got things we call scrapers, which are used for hide processing. We've got ones we call bifaces, which are used as knives. A couple choppers, which would be to sort of disarticulate carcasses when you're butchering an animal.
They've worked closely with Indigenous elders, and Indigenous youth are also taking part in the dig. A ceremony was held before shovels hit the ground, ensuring the entire process of unearthing a historic campsite is done with culturally appropriate protocols, right down to how the artifacts are dug up and bagged.
They're doing it in a good way, starting with ceremony and having that exposure of the future archaeologists to elders and spending time so that they recognize the importance of it so that they can carry that into industry going forward.
And I really like the fact that they've included the Indigenous youth in this, and hopefully it gives them the push they need to aspire to maybe get into a field such as archaeology, especially, you know, with all of the different remote areas. It would sure be great to have the Indigenous being part of those involved in chasing their history, exposing, digging, promoting, and saving, their culture. So I'm really happy about this, especially seeing that the Indigenous youth are being included in it. It's just a great thing. It really does, ignite the idea of education. And bring them closer to their culture. Moving right along. Toronto Hospital suing the consortium that built it. This is craziness.
Humber River Hospital serves more than 850,000 people in the GTA. It touts itself as being one of Canada's largest acute care hospitals and North America's first fully digital hospital. But there are some issues. A series of lawsuits have been filed over the last few years, amounting to more than $110 million.
That's a lot of money.
They paint a picture of construction and design issues that are ultimately affecting hospital operations and the safety of patients and staff. The alleged issues within the 1.7 million square foot facility include problems with the water system and leaks causing flooding to uneven flooring with bulges and slopes. The most recent lawsuit claims a sizable portion of the hospital's floors are not level and or flat. It says it's difficult for staff to move equipment, supplies, food, and patients, and often wheeled carts must be placed behind rubber stoppers to stop them from sliding.
That's pretty bad.
These conditions have led and will continue to lead to health and safety issues for patients and staff, the claim reads. It also says critical rooms and areas have been unavailable, which has impacted the level of care. The claim was filed in April by Humber River Hospital against Plenary Healthcare Partnerships Humber, the consortium responsible for designing, building, financing, and maintaining the hospital. Plenary has yet to file a statement of defense and declined to comment, citing contractual obligations. Since 2023, Plenary has filed 4 of its own lawsuits against contractors hired to build the hospital for compensation relating to water issues. One claims within the first year of the hospital opening, some patient rooms couldn't get access to hot and cold water. Another outlines damage a leak caused to the cancer center. In court filings, the contractors have denied the allegations. The hospital says it's working to address the issues, saying in part, "In the meantime, we are implementing all necessary measures to ensure the best experience for our patients, staff, and community."
Pretty crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, we're going to move on here to Doug Ford. He did a presser here today. We're just going to kind of break this down.
Sorry, did the ambassador give you any clearer sense of what Canada needs to do to lead to a drop?
I don't think that's really the ambassador's job, as he said. That's really up to our federal government and the U.S. federal government. Again, Minister LeBlanc is down there meeting with Secretary Lutnick, I'm sure they're going to have a great discussion on many different issues. I'll be speaking to Minister LeBlanc later tonight for an update on how the discussions went. But I feel that we're getting closer. That's the positive news.
What makes you feel that we're getting closer?
I just feel that the conversations, are getting very close to hopefully a real positive deal happening.
With regard to Bill 5, would you reconsider what you had said last week about it being a very small vocal group opposed to this, based on what's happened over the last few days?
Well, what I'll say about that, this is an opportunity for First Nations, Indigenous people to have an opportunity and have equity partnership in anything we do. We're the only government that's put $3 billion forward for their equity partnership in any deals that we make up there. And even during the campaign, I repeated it 1,000 times, nothing happens without the consultation with the First Nations communities, along with the $70 million of training we'll give their young people, all their community, along with $10 million of scholarships. I'll stick with this. I've done more for First Nations communities than any premier in the history of this province, and I believe in duty to consult. I believe in treaty rights, but we can't take 2-3 years for duty to consult. We need to move forward. And what I've experienced, when they have an equity partnership in any deal, the duty consult moves rapidly, really quick, which is a good thing. But there's an opportunity unlike they've ever seen before, and we just want a great partnership. And there are many chiefs, no matter if it's Chief Sonny, chiefs of Webbequay, Martin Falls, that they want this road built. They want the quality of life for their kids that they never had. And that's what we're providing with them, and they're going to be great partners as we move forward. Hold on.
Sorry. Saul said that what this is it's a repeat history, and it could lead to confrontation and standoffs like the one that caused the death of George.
Yeah, well, that is really unfortunate. The NDP member, I emphasize the NDP member, wants to speak this way. We want a collaborative relationship with our First Nations communities. I've met with many chiefs, and it's really unfortunate that member is speaking this way. That's the last thing we want to happen.
Okay, so yeah, you can see he didn't really want to have to answer that question, but this is whom he is talking about.
Things got rather heated at Queen's Park today over the controversial Bill 5. As Julie Sharp tells us, one MPP was ejected from the Ontario legislature after claiming Doug Ford is lying to First Nations.
The Premier is telling untruths to First Nations.
Please withdraw.
Our rights are not being respected.
Draw the comment.
I'm not withdrawing. Speak.
Hassan Malmakwa, you have been named.
A few minutes into question period at Queen's Park today, NDP MPP Saw Mamakwa was removed after he refused several times to take back his comments accusing Premier Doug Ford of lying.
You cannot trample on inherent rights. You cannot trample on First Nation rights. You cannot trample on those things and get away with it. They need to be said in a very public way. The Premier is telling untruths. Basically, it's another way of the Premier, the government is lying.
According to the Ford government, Bill 5 is meant to hasten economic development in the province and would give the government power to suspend provincial and municipal laws for chosen projects in areas deemed to have so-called economic importance. It would also remove some endangered species protections. The bill is being opposed by multiple Indigenous groups, environmentalists, and the opposition. Last week, the province said it would make amendments to the law to include special Indigenous economic zones at the request of First Nations for projects they want fast-tracked. However, Mamakwa says that is not the case.
He respects and honors treaties, that he respects and honors the duty to consult. And that's not the truth, because the way they're presenting this bill, the way the bill is written up speaks the opposite.
NDP leader Marit Stiles says Ford's government needs to dump the bill altogether.
There is no fixing Bill 5, and that the only right thing to do is to scrap it and go back to the drawing board.
I kind of agree. This is a liberal bill. Dougie is a liberal, and the way that it's written up, the powers that it's given, is just going to all benefit his corporate sponsors. This is just a takeover of the green movement, and they're gonna railroad anybody in their way, so that their corporations, their green zealotism, makes profits off of the backs of not just the taxpayers and Canadians, but the Indigenous communities up north. They need to rewrite it. They need to toss it. They need to fix this issue. And Ontario, you need to actually vote in a real conservative government. Sloan's kind of involved in one. They got railroaded by this last election. Seriously. You guys have got 3 socialist parties there, the Conservatives, the NDP, and the Liberals. You need to decimate them and get a real government in, kind of like what Canada has to do, so we can actually form new parties. Because if not, West is gone and it's too late. And if the West leaves, Canada is going down the flusher. Now, we're going to move on a little bit further in Dougie's interview.
Tomorrow,
He's all in.
What are you prepared to do to retaliate?
Well, that's going to be a discussion that the federal government and ourselves, and I'm sure other premiers will have. But let's see how the discussion goes. Let's hope it's a positive thing. But if they keep on the 25% tariffs on steel, my recommendation is slap them with the 25% because we can't be kicked around any longer. I want to take a positive approach. That's what I want. I want a positive approach. I want to make a deal. We want to get through this, give certainty to not only investors here in Canada and Ontario, but certainty for the people and manufacturers in the U.S. I'll take one more question.
Okay, so now let's deal with some truths. Some truths here.
Joining me now is Zeckelman Industries Chairman and CEO Barry Zeckelman. Barry, good to see you. Your company is a leader in the steel industry and the global trading, especially between Canada and the U.S. Give us your sense of the 50% steel tariff that will take effect tomorrow. What's the impact?
Yeah, first off, I want to thank the administration for their continued focus on this issue. I mean, the impact will be broad. There's no question it's going to have a dynamic and an immediate impact in the U.S. on a lot of the steel products that come in. I think the upping the duties was the right thing to do. In some cases, it's at the right level. In other cases, it's still probably not enough. I think it'll have a dramatic effect on Canada, and it's going to force Canada to take a stand like the U.S. is taking. And Canada needs to push the imports that come into Canada out to create a robust Canadian market where Canadian steel can be consumed in Canada and pushed out, just like the U.S. is trying to do. That'll balance the trade between the U.S. and Canada, and then hopefully we can get to a resolution between the two countries where we need to be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Canada because it remains the top steel exporter into America, sending more than $7 billion worth of steel into the U.S. last year. We've got a chart here that shows Mexico, Brazil, and South Korea round out the top 4, all hovering at around $3 billion in annual steel exports. Germany, Japan, Taiwan, Vietnam also on that list. As far as aluminum exports, Canada is number 1 again by an incomparable margin, sending more than $9 billion worth of aluminum into the U.S. But when you look at the groups and the countries that are leading the import and the export, rather, of steel into the U.S., how does this global trade relationship and supply chains change things now with the 50% steel?
Well, in Canada's perspective, of course, Canada is being invaded by steel from other countries. And like I said, that needs to get pushed out.
Now, did you hear what he said? Let's just rewind that. Listen carefully. This is what Canadian news is not talking about.
Canada is being invaded by steel from other countries. And like I said, that needs to get pushed out. In cases like Mexico, Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand, all of those others, the problem there is they're being used as a proxy by China. So, Taiwan and Vietnam have increased imports of steel from China dramatically and then transship it into the U.S. or make it into various products and then ship it into the U.S. at the expense of U.S. consumers of steel. So in Canada's case, we're under the same type of attack as the U.S. In the other countries' cases, they're being used as a proxy for China. And we need to balance this out. We need to push that back. The biggest thing that we contend with, sorry, Maria, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. What's the biggest thing we have to contend with?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we contend with is we don't have a long-term trade policy. So it's hard for us and consumers of steel and producers of steel to make long-term investments. We want to know if we're investing 100, 200, 300 million, $1 billion, that we're going to have years and decades for that to run prosperously and pay off. So we have to have a long-term strategy. We have to have a comprehensive strategy that closes all the loopholes, all the back doors, like these trans-shipping countries, like the derivative products, and then we're going to have a robust steel industry here with robust consumers and tremendous employment, tremendous job opportunities, tremendous income, and we will secure our nation's future. I mean, the problem today is, people say, well, prices are going up. Why are drug prices so high in the U.S.? Drug prices are high in the U.S. because we don't produce any of it here. That's the problem. So we don't have that option to be efficient here. We don't have that option to negotiate against countries who ship those drugs in here because we don't produce it here. Can you imagine if we didn't have a steel industry? Or we didn't have steel consumers? If you think the price of steel would be cheap in the U.S. because we'd be able to import, it would be the other way. Yeah. The other way would be they have us hostage. We can't do that. It's a national security issue. We have to take this tough stand.
Are you expecting retaliation from Canada? What is Canada going to do in the face of this, since it's the lead exporter into the U.S.?
Yeah, so I'm actually in Ottawa on Thursday. We'll be talking about this issue. As you know, I'm a Canadian consumer of steel, and I'm up against these tariffs coming into the U.S., although I have much more production in the U.S. I think Canada's stance should be Canada should push out the illegally dumped and foreign steel that makes its way into Canada. It will create a robust market in Canada, which will then take the pressure off Canadian steel that goes into the U.S., and that trade will balance. And I think the U.S. will have to look at that and say, look, the U.S. ships $5 billion of steel into Canada every year, but Canada ships $7 billion to the U.S. I think that needs to be balanced. And I think it's balanced, and that the U.S. can look at Canada and realize and be certain that the back door to Canada is closed and that foreign steel won't transfer its way into Canada and into the U.S. I think the relationship between Canada and the U.S. will definitely be a much better relationship. I think the temperature will come down, and I think we can create a really fortress North America. And I think that's what.
So now, during Trump's first administration, this was a big issue, and Canada actually did seem like they pretended is what they did. They pretended to stop all of the backdoor dealing, all of the especially from China and a lot of these other countries, that they were bringing it in, they were stamping it and labeling it as Canadian, and then sending it down to the States. Now, this is an injustice to our own steel and aluminum sectors, and the media isn't talking about this. This is what Trump is after. This is what the administration is after. They have no problem sharing the table, cutting the steak in half between Canada and the United States. But they refuse to know that we're going against everything that the States is trying to do to secure their economy, while we decimate our own for the pocketbooks of the wealthy by bringing in all this backdoor crappy steel. Enough is enough. Welcome to the liberals, people. This is what mainstream doesn't tell you. This is why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. This is what their main concern is. And the percentages that Zeckelman is talking about, if we eliminated the backdoor steel, we would be on level playing ground. There probably would never have been a tariff put on us. We would have been a fair partner, but we're not because of our socialist regime government. They don't care about Canadians. They don't care. All they care about is the global cabal. And Trump is putting an end to that. And like in the very earlier clip I showed you how that guy nailed it. This is the cartel, the monarch helping the cartel to all line their pockets and pillage. They don't care.
The president and the administration wants. They want Fortress North America to push out all the bad actors. And Canada can be a good
includes
part of that.
China. I mean, China is sending all sorts of imports through all different countries, and likely Canada as well, right? What are your thoughts before you?
Absolutely.
Before you go, Barry, what are your thoughts on this Nippon-U.S. steel deal?
Yeah, I can't see behind the scenes in terms of the CFIUS issues and national security. What I can say, and you've heard me say before, I think that if we have a robust trade policy, certainly the steel industry will do well. Look, we welcome investments. I welcome new capacity. I welcome new efficient capacity. And if the investments that Nippon wants to make in U.S. steel are going to truly bring that, it only can be good for a consumer like me. It will give us access to more steel, more cleanly produced steel, more high quality steel, more geographically centered steel around our plants, so it's easily accessible. So if we truly push out imports, we're still a net importer of steel. If we can push them out and add capacity here, God bless. I think it's great. And, I wish them all the success. And obviously the administration feels it can work. So, I'm going to support it. I'm a strong supporter of President Trump and his policies regarding steel.
Done. Boom. Take that to the bank there, people. Take that to the bank. Again, mainstream media not doing their job. Lying to all of you Canadians. Anyways, I'm going to call that an episode. I hope I covered everything. Sorry for the speed in which I was rattling through a lot of this media, but there's a lot to tell. There's a lot that Canadians need to see, and we got to straighten out 99% of what media feeds you because it's all propaganda. Legacy is propaganda. It's easy to play a lot of these smaller clips where they are just talking truths about little things that are happening, such as all of the different crimes and a few other things. But a person needs to make sure that there's true integrity in reporting on these and giving the deeper issue, like the Calistini's, like the steel, and a whole bunch of other things. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. It not only helps me grow my channel, but it helps get the news out so we can break this cycle of propaganda, burst the bubble of this fascist government, the control that they have, which is so obvious, especially since it's proven to have kept them in power for another election. Absolute disgraceful. Here's looking forward to maybe the government falling on the throne speech. I have definitely got my fingers crossed. Until next time, you guys, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm Elias Tagay. Stay informed.